All right. Hello, YouTube friends. We are just about to start this class. I'm just waiting for everyone in the room to collect themselves, and we will be getting going. So your patience, please. All right. We are going to talk this morning about how to commit to your one thing, basically time management. So we're going to talk about post-COVID world. We're going to talk about success in time management. We're going to talk about something called the 80-20 rule. We're going to talk about the idea of efficiency versus effectiveness, and the one thing rule. And that should take us maybe 15 minutes. When we're done that, we're going to spend most of the rest of the class talking about tools and systems to be successful with managing the way we use our time. And we're going to talk about some misunderstandings we have that I want you guys to keep in mind when you're thinking about time management. That's going to be our focus this afternoon or this morning. All right. So COVID changed a lot of things. And during the middle of COVID, things were really hectic and unpredictable and a lot of frayed nerves and all that stuff. But we're kind of post-COVID now. But things have settled in. So one of the things that's settled in is there's an expectation out there that people don't need to go to offices to work. People are looking for jobs where they have flexibility to stay at home wherever possible. And that has impacted the way we interact with our brokerages as well in terms of coming to the office. To give you an example, there are very few classes on my calendar for new agents that are required to be live in person. We do once a week, a 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. the required live in person that doesn't get recorded, but that's it. Nowadays, everything is available for watching on demand or to watch by way of a live stream or on a live Zoom. So we have that's changed things. And because people are ingesting education, media, and meetings with people from a distance of a box, basically, it's created a need for new focus and attention. I would argue we're more distracted than we've ever been before. And how are we going to avoid and manage distraction? In fact, the more I teach this, the more I think we cannot avoid it. I think all we can do is manage it. So more working from home, less desire to commute. As busy real estate agents, we often don't want to take a meeting in person because we might have to drive 20 minutes, a half an hour to get to that appointment. We don't want to do that. We'd rather be doing something else. So instead of working on a CMA or preparing for a buyer or seller appointment or doing lead gen in that time. So we have a less desire to commute. On the other hand, we're sick and tired of Zoom. We're sick and tired of online because it is so sterile. And we lose so much context for communications. You guys who are in the room live today are getting something out of this presentation or will get something out of this presentation that is richer, whether you like it or not. It's richer than what is happening for folks who are going to be watching this at 11 o'clock at night while they're sipping their coffee, or maybe in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, sipping their coffee, and they got the kids yelling in the background and the dog is running around like a crazy dog. And, the phone is ringing and stuff is happening. Their cell phone is blinking and notifications. So you guys are already in a better learning environment. But the way I also want you to think about this is from the point of view of interacting with clients. We talk about how it's best to meet clients in person because 80% plus of human communication is nonverbal. But that's a time management challenge, because if you make an appointment with someone to meet them at a coffee shop or meet them in person or at the office somewhere, that's time going to the appointment and after getting back to where you were. And that's a choice you make about your time. But the context, the way you interact with that other human is going to be far better. So it's a juggling act, right? So always remember that we are our own boss in real estate. and we're not accountable to no one but ourselves. And throughout our careers, we struggle to be organized and manage our time well. Nobody is, I don't know anyone who is a master of time management. Some of us are students of it. I consider myself a student of it. I'm always trying to improve. And there are certain tools and leverages I use, which we're going to talk about later. But it's a lifelong struggle. And for me personally, it's gotten harder because the distractions are more intense than they used to be. And maybe I'm more easily distracted as I get older too. Squirrel. Squirrel. Oh, that's a great point. Does everyone know the reference to the squirrel? Does everyone know the squirrel reference? So there was a great movie, Pixar movie called Up, with the voice of the late Ed Asner. And that's a great movie. So if you want to know about squirrels and time and distraction, go watch Up. It's a Pixar animated feature. You can see it on the Disney Channel. All right. We are going to be focusing today on this book called The One Thing. That little stuff will disappear. At least it should disappear in a minute. There we go. The book, The One Thing. How many people have read The One Thing book? Oh, one of you has. Good. That is our recommended book of the month. Every month, I give you guys a recommended book on your weekly calendar update. The book of the month for December is The One Thing. This is not a book about real estate. It's a book about time management. It is a very easy read. I recommend you get either a printed copy or a Kindle version because there's diagrams. And if you get Audible, you have to download the PDFs and it's a bit more awkward. Although if you don't have any other choice, at least listen to it. I believe the ideas in this book are more relevant than they ever were when it was written because of how our society has changed and continues to change. We have to be thoughtful, mindful of how we manage our day. The more thoughtful we are about it, as opposed to just letting stuff happen to us, the better we are going to be likely to achieve the goals we set for ourselves. So we're not going to do that. The book says this: what is the one thing you can do such that by doing it, everything else is easier or unnecessary? The book says there is always a one thing. And that one thing is like the first domino. And if you don't do that one thing, the other dominoes won't fall down. That's the idea of the one thing. Now, you could disagree with that. You could say, no, there's 17 things. And if I don't do them all immediately, right away, but the book did research. Gary Keller, the author of the book, did research. So it isn't like he just made it up out of his head. Okay, so let's go with this for now. Here is the way he looks at it in the book. You have different spheres in your life. So you may have different one things for different spheres of your life. Spiritual, physical, personal, key relationships, job, business, and finances. We are going to be focusing, guess what, on the business one. Another thing to think about around the one thing rule is we've learned from science and studies that 20% of effort leads to 80% of results. So if that's true, we would want to spend as much time as we can doing the 20% stuff, because that's going to get us a better function than doing 80% stuff that leads only to 20% of it. So when we think about the one thing, we're also thinking about our 20% effort. So when you start thinking about this in your own lives, I want you to think about what moves forward your life goal. Right? You all have goals and dreams and passions. What moves forward your passion, your goal in your life? In business, what's the one thing that moves your business success forward more than any other individual thing? When you have a to-do list, what should you do versus what could you do? Some people, we're going to talk more about to-do lists later. And then when you figure that out, you can actually plot out how much of your time is spent doing this 20% work that's going to lead to 80% of the results. So, question for you guys in the room here. What is the 20% work of a real estate agent? Just shout it out. Thank you. Lead gen, lead gen, lead gen. Yes. Prospecting. I would argue active prospecting, not passive marketing. But as long as you're doing efforts to get people to know who you are in the broadest sense of the word, let's say that's okay. So what are some of the activities of lead gen? What are some of the activities of lead gen? Door knocking. Phone calls. Oh, hosting open houses.
Emails and texts.
Emails and texts, absolutely, as long as they are not promoting the upcoming, concert or baseball game, but are actually, relevant to your profession.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe hosting, as Michelle was talking in the last hour, hosting a home buyer workshop, right? Maybe having a resource table at a public fair where you promote your real estate work. Absolutely. I also want to bring forward the concept of efficiency versus effective, because I think that's important to this 80-20 business. The 80% work that is driving only 20% of results should be done efficiently. That is to say, quick and fast and not perfect. Get it done. So you should not be spending hours and hours and hours designing that perfect Canva postcard. Somebody's smiling because they know what I'm talking about, right? You should not be making your buyer presentation, spending more time on it than it is worth, or your listing presentation. Now, do you want to have good ones? Absolutely. But do you need to get 100%? No, you need to get 95%, maybe even 90% of the way there. Okay. That's efficiency. Okay. You should plot out the time for those prep things and not over maximize them. The second part is effectiveness. That has to do with this 20% work. If you are going to have one thing that drives forward 80% of your results, you want it to be really good use of that time, right? Would we agree? So if we are doing lead gen that is not getting us conversations, at least, or appointments, then there's something wrong with our strategy. When I put up on the screen the results, when I do that in our other meetings, how many hours do you spend doing lead gen and how many conversations do you have? I'm always talking about this effectiveness business. The agent that spends 5 hours and has 30 conversations in 5 hours is more effective than the one that spends 5 hours and has 3 conversations. And I've seen that both reports. Okay, so sometimes some of it is out of your control. You host a 3-hour open house and nobody comes. That's devastating. But there are mitigating things we could do with that time, but that's not what this class is about, right? So when you start thinking in the grand scheme of things over months, what lead gen strategies are going to get you the most conversations? That's a matter of effective. So we want your day to look ideal, not typical, right? So if the one thing is lead gen for the hours you're doing real estate, in this graph, that's the time would be doing lead gen. But I don't even ask for that much. I only ask for 35%, 30, 35%. So before we start talking about tools, I want to have a short discussion with the folks in the room here about your current challenges with time management and how you're managing. So what do people do here? What are people struggling with time management? Where are they finding the most stressors around their time?
Unique to our situation, or maybe not so unique since we're all pretty new here. Right now we are trying to get through these new agent things. We're trying to watch the classes and attend the classes and block out time for that. We are transitioning from being full-time musicians. This time of year is kind of when a lot of freelance musicians make their dough, because there's not a lot of things happening in January, et cetera, et cetera.
All the holiday concerts are in December.
Yeah, you're nuts, man. And that's so also trying to do that right now.
Right.
It's the right time. Also, our little real estate agent in training will be showing up in a little under 4 weeks. So making sure the bassinet has been put together, and it's so just getting ready for all that.
You're juggling a lot of one thing.
A bunch.
Yeah, it's hard.
And so it's, yeah, really hard to even be thinking about lead gen, except not since we are doing all these holiday functions. Hey, Matt, how's it going? You had a good year? Doing great. And also,
Yeah.
I'm so excited about this new opportunity to be able to help people. Really kind of throwing a lot of my passion into that. And so is that considered lead gen? Just
Yeah, sure. If you're
conversations?
consciously going into it, making sure you have the conversation
Yeah,
and it's not
yeah,
just absolutely.
yeah.
How many people in the room have children at home? So Terry, you probably struggle with this too, right? And you are constantly cross-managing two number one priorities. Number one, your career, and number one, your kids, right? And we all have stuff in our personal life. Maybe we're nurturing situations with family members like parents or in-laws or spouses, partners. All that stuff's very important too, right? And it's hard. So how do you manage it, Terry? With when you have obligations for your children, you also have real estate obligations.
I try to balance whenever possible too, because if I'm at the PTA and then we just talk about PTA, but also it comes out like the real estate. So if I'm
Same as what Matt was talking about.
estate, whenever it's possible, I'm not trying to be like, because I don't want to be that person either.
Yeah.
That's me. So if when they know that I'm a realtor, they just ask questions. Yeah.
See, it's great. She's done a really good job of changing her identity from her previous work. Yeah. So it's a struggle. I'm not saying it's easy, but we're going to share some techniques in the next part of this that I'm hoping will give some insight and shed some, maybe create some new opportunity for you to help organize these competing priorities. We all have competing priorities, right? Some of us have health stuff, right? I've had people in this program who had to leave it because of health stuff. They had to make a different decision. I would argue health comes first. Anyway, we'll get to that later. So some tools. This is a list. We're going to go through them. The 411 is in your business planning worksheet that you got when you started with me. It's basically a year of goals, then each month's goals, and then each week's goals. And there's there's tools for that. Then the 135 is, here is my priority, say lead gen. Here are 3 different types of lead gen I'm going to do. Here are 5 different strategies for each one. That's called a 135, and it's also in the business planning worksheet. Calendar. So this is the number one tool as far as I'm concerned. They did some studies at Harvard decades and decades ago. I think it was Harvard. And they asked people what their goal was for their life. And they measured it 10 years later and 20 years later. And they found that the people who wrote down their goals using tools like these first 3 did much better in achieving them than the folks who never wrote it down. And they found that those folks who wrote them down and also held themselves accountable in some manner did even better in achieving their goals. Yes.
I remember one time having a year calendar dry erase on my wall,
Cool.
and because I could just see it all, my goals, my plans, and I could just check it off as
I love that. That's why we make a big fuss at KW about business planning in the fall. We had all these business planning clinics, and I do it in this program. And I only do 1 year. And it's intimidating enough starting a real estate career to ask you to start thinking 3-5 years out. But we do have more broader focused, less focused business planning clinics. We also have apps on our phone. So, when we're trying to train ourselves a new time management technique, using an app might be helpful. There's apps on your phone you can use. Your desire for what you want, this cannot be overstated. If you want something, you can make it happen. If you don't really want it or you're mixed, conflicted feelings, it won't happen. And accountability tools. We'll talk a little bit about that too. So here is the 411 form, basically monthly, annually, and weekly goals. And you have a new one for every week, or you modify it for every week. As I said, you all have a copy of this in your business plan that you got from me. It's also on KW Connect, and it's also on the portal. I mean, you can get it in a variety of places. And this is the 135 And this is again just an old PDF version of this. Nowadays, you can use the one I gave you. And you can have lots of these for every different part of your life. So at the top, we might put in lead gen, and then your lead gen methodologies 1, 2, and 3, and then 5 strategies for each one. That's just an example. But maybe your goal is to do profit share, to make money with the profit share program here. So you're going to recruit. Your goal is to recruit 5 new agents to come to KW. That's part of your profit share plan. You might have that written down, profit share, and then the 3 ways you're going to do it: add 5 people, go to this many events, or have this many interactions, or blah, 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 and how you're going to make each one happen. Up to 5 strategies. That's the idea. Again, it's the issue of writing it down that makes us more likely to get there than just in our mind. So we've talked about this before, but it's a very important matrix. I love this matrix. We can divide everything we do in life into being either urgent or important, or not urgent or not important. So stuff that is urgent and important is crisis, emergency. If a child, the school nurse calls from the school and says your child got sick, come take him home, I think that qualifies as a crisis, emergency, not necessarily a crisis, but certainly an emergency. You're going to drop everything because the child comes first. Agreed? Right? Sick loved one, anything like that. Deadline-driven project. Has anyone ever noticed how the time expands, the work expands to fill the time allotted? Right? So if you have a deadline of getting an offer in by 5 p.m., suddenly you are laser focused. You're going to do everything about that offer, and everything else, all those distractions go away because you've got this deadline. That's the main deadline we face in real estate, is offer deadline or response deadline. Last minute preparations. We have an agent who is doing home buyer workshops. I can promise you that in the hour before the home buyer workshop, they are laser focused on getting ready. You've done them. On doing that. So those are all urgent and important things, and they belong on your calendar. You should actually plan. I mean, you can't plan for emergencies that you're not expecting, but they're going to happen. The box underneath it is urgent but not important. So those are people interrupting you, right? And you're doing something else that is their urgency, but not your urgency. Some callers, some mail or emails, some meetings, many pressing matters, and popular activities. What do they mean by popular activities? You just have to go to the Taylor Swift concert. I mean, there ain't no doubt about it. You're going to see Taylor Swift. She's only here for one night at Shoreline Amphitheater in Mountain View. You're going. That is urgent, but not important. Arguably. I mean, if you're a Swiftie, it's probably the most important thing, right? But you get it, right? Then let's go across to number 4. That is your time wasting stuff. Busy work you do so you don't have to do the hard work. Trivial activities, some calls and emails. Has anyone here ever wasted a good 20 minutes, half an hour scanning their emails to clean it up, to clean up their inbox? And that's completely number 4. You don't have to do it. We just have this compulsion, right? And time wasters. How many people here play games on their phone? I know I do. I'm a complete addict. I have certain games I play, and I spend a half an hour every evening before I go to sleep. I cannot go to sleep until I've played certain games. And my wife I'm codependent with my wife because she plays them with me. So. I'm mostly word games, New York Times. Yes. True. So that's number 4. But box 2 is where we want to be this is where we want to be in our business lives for sure. Preparation, planning, and prevention. Values clarification. Capability improvement, relationship building, and true relaxation and recreation. So preparation, planning, and prevention. If you don't have a good listing presentation or a good buyer presentation, that's that. Values clarification. It is worth spending time. Why should I hire you? Answering the question for yourself. Capability improvement. Being here right now. This has value. All the classes we offer, I hope, bring value, right? Relationship building. What's that? Or what do we call it? Yeah, thank you. Lead gen. What is lead gen? It's not you could think of it as getting leads and getting appointments. Yes, you can, but I don't want you to think about it that way. I want you to think about lead gen as relationship building, because our type of sales is about relationships. It's not about that other stuff. It's about building relationships so that people will trust you. So you have to invest time in them. And then true recreation and relaxation. As human beings, as animals, if we do not set aside time for relaxation and recreation, we are going to get sick. It's really simple. All right. So we're going to start, we're going to, in this slide deck, create a calendar for example purposes. What should be so imagine it's 2025, we're planning out next year, and we have 0 things on our calendar. It's completely blank, 24 hours. Yeah, fantasy land, right? But let's just say, what's the first thing we put on our calendar?
Time blocking for lead gen.
No. Thank you for playing. Any other guesses? You're on the right track. Absolutely. Personal time first. Wellness, meditation, exercise. We want healthy agents. We want healthy humans. Okay, you must think about that. Also includes sleep. Do not shortchange yourself on sleep. You have no idea. There have been so many studies. If you're getting 1 hour less sleep than your body needs, whether it's 6, 7, or 8 hours that your body needs, and you guys know, you are suboptimal the next day in your performance. There's definitely no question about it. Your mind doesn't go as fast. Number 2, rest and play. Now, I'm very passionate about number 2, and I know I get pushback about it. I strongly urge you guys to schedule time off from real estate. Not time off where you're going to be inundated with children and spousal demands, but time away from it so you can rest your brain and rest your body. So for most of my career, I took Fridays off. And unless there was some pressing deadline of an offer due or a counteroffer response, I didn't work Fridays. I would get up late, go to a breakfast. I'd try out different breakfast places every week. One day I went into San Francisco. I went into Soma, and I went to this wonderful little French bistro. It's just a lovely day. And I took my time. Everything was just slow and easy. Or maybe you stay in bed and read a good book, or Sunday morning read the New York Times, whatever it is, right? Or maybe you go hiking, walks, whatever it is. Make sure you rest and play. I used to take Fridays off, and I had it in my voicemail. I had it in my messaging. I'm not available today. Please call so and so, or please call me tomorrow morning, or whatever. Nowadays, I take Saturdays off. Not only do I take Saturdays off, but I am typically not even available by text between like 10 and 2 or 2:30 on Saturday. So then we get to what Matthew said. Once we've done those 2, we're going to schedule our one thing work, which in real estate is lead gen. Put it on the calendar. Then, and then everything else will be after that, at your discretion, right? Now, there is an argument that you should schedule your one thing work as early in the day as possible. It isn't always practical to go door knocking at 10 o'clock in the morning, or desirable. It may not be practical to hold a home buyer workshop at 10 o'clock in the morning, but where possible. And then use color coding so you can actually see that you're doing your 40% of time for lead gen. It's showing up visually. That helps too. And then review your calendar every week. Make sure you look at it every week to know that, first of all, for me, it's essential because I do so many appointments. I need to make sure nobody's double booked, right? Make sure people have canceled. I open up the slot again. I mean, there's a lot I need to do administrative, but that's me. You guys aren't going to have the same kind of appointment pressure. As we think about calendaring, 3 ideas. Remember that if it isn't on your calendar, it doesn't exist. It's just in here. And, how reliable is that? Maybe you've got a mind like a sieve, not like a sieve, like a trap, and your mind, you're never going to forget anything. It's great. But if you're more like me, your mind is like a sieve and you forget stuff all the time. Things just fall out. right? If I don't put them on my calendar, it doesn't happen. I've taken recently to using my Apple iPhone and setting reminders because I don't want it on my calendar because it's going to clutter my calendar and it's not really an appointment. It's really just do activity X, like, feed the cat or send this text to person Y. I often put them in as reminders with alarms and deadlines using my iPhone. That way they don't make my calendar look messy. But if it's an appointment or something that's going to take more than 5 minutes, it should be on your calendar. If you erase it, replace it, specifically with regard to your lead gen time. So let's suppose that you had plotted that from 1 to 3, you were going to be phoning, texting, and emailing your buddies about, but something comes up. There's something comes up that you can't do that. Could be anything, but you make the decision to not do that and do the other thing. By the way, we're always making decisions like this. And by the way, you are not victims of it. You are making choices. I was just thinking about this morning because my father-in-law took ill and he's in emergency. He's 89 years old, 88 years old. He has a very bad infection, right? He's in a hospital in Florida. I'm supposed to be going to Puerto Vallarta on Monday morning. So I'm thinking about decisions, right? Even though I don't want to. God forbid I have to go to Florida. The only reason I mention this is because it will be my decision how I choose to manage my time. And there are costs and benefits with every decision you make. Hopefully I don't have to make that one. We make these decisions. It's not like life throws us up stuff and we're victims of it. We get to choose. All right, schedule spaces between your appointments. Make time for you to breathe. Don't do appointments like I do. See, I'm still learning this stuff. I do not schedule spaces between my appointments on Friday afternoons. So what tends to happen is that, I'm very good about keeping the half-hour time slot for my agents that I coach. But then, even if we start on time, I have to end it sharp because I got someone waiting in the waiting room in the Zoom or in the office to meet with me. But you guys don't have that same kind of appointment time pressure as me. So I'm hoping you'll make a bit different decision and allow 15 minutes to half an hour in between appointments so you can go a bathroom break and refresh and reset. Makes you more effective. So here's a picture of a calendar. This is right out of the book. Notice vacation is timed out here, planning time on Sundays, and the one thing every other day in the mornings. Notice Saturday doesn't have anything on it. That's the day off, right? So how do we ensure that we can protect that 20% time even more, right? Not just put it on the calendar, but protect it. So number one, talk about this with your loved ones. Make sure they are buying in and will honor you. Okay. If you are working from home and they're working from home too, you want to make sure that they're not going to ask you to do the laundry or the dishes or feed the cats or whatever it is while you are doing your 20% work. Okay. Darling, from 9 to 11 this morning, please don't bother me. You'll have an understanding, hopefully. But if you don't have the support of your loved ones, that's a conversation to have if you're in that situation. Set up a location in your home or workspace that is quiet and away from potential distractions. Maybe you're closing the door. Dress for work each morning, even if you're working from home. This is a huge psychological thing. When we dress for work, even if we're working from home, it creates an idea of professionalism. It's good for when you're on a Zoom. I mean, I find it a little bit frustrating when people say, I'm not Zoom ready to talk to you, because it's business and I'm expecting them to show up for business. But people are coming in. Now, if it's a personal thing, of course, right? But if it's business meeting, I'm expecting you guys to come to the meeting and be on camera with me. It's bad enough when I teach Ignite classes and I have 2 people live on Zoom and 18 people with their muted and with their screens off. That's bad enough. But if I'm doing a one-on-one and you can't come visual with me, that is telling me something about your commitment to this process and to me. And I haven't embarrassed anyone about it. It's happened a few times, but it's telling me information. Don't be that person. And start work at the same time every day to build a habit around it. Don't think that just because you're working from home, you can sort of sleep in an extra hour. More tips. Okay, so the biggest distraction in my world is my phone. I get certain alerts from, I don't get a lot of alerts. I've turned off almost all of them, but there are certain alerts I get. And I get certain advisories about text messages and emails, and I want to get text message advisories. So while you're doing your 20% work, turning off, the great thing about iPhones and Androids now is that you can actually temporarily turn off all notifications for 20 minutes, half an hour, or whatever, so that during that time you don't get interrupted. Avoid non-essential email and text. This is hard. You know, you're busy doing phone calls, texts, and emails. You're going to go into your email, not reading or responding to something that looks more sexy than making the phone call or doing the email is really hard. And I don't have a quick solution for this, but I want you guys to be aware of it. I mean, one idea that I've used is to have 2 different email addresses. So I have 3 actually. I've got one email address for productivity coaching. I have one email address for real estate sales, and I have another email address for business commerce stuff. And I direct every time I'm doing any kind of retail transaction or professional commerce transaction, it goes through my third account. I don't even see those notifications and alerts. All my junk stuff, all the trivial stuff also goes there. That helps, but it doesn't solve the problem. Create a supportive physical environment. Remove clutter. If you have clutter on your desk, I guarantee you it'll distract you. I know, personal experience. I don't even want to show you what my desk looks like. Next time you're on a call with me and we're on Zoom and I'm at home, ask me to show you my desk and you'll know. Ties. If you're in a place where it's not family and you can't have a conversation with every person, I'll show you that next. Develop the ability to say no to people who distract you. If somebody comes to you and it's not a good time to talk, you have to be able to say so. Tenzin knows this because I just did it to her 20 minutes ago, right? You have to be able to set boundaries. I am going to help you. I am. You have to say no, though. Some of us really struggle to say no, right? Isn't that right? It's hard to say no. We want to say yes to everybody. I can help you buy a home, any home you want. I'll meet with you. I don't care that you're not pre-approved, right? We want to encourage these relationships. We also need to run a business and be professional about it. I'm happy to practice this with anybody. How do you say no? And then find an accountability partner. Somebody that you can check in with maybe daily, not family. I recommend it not be family. At the end of the day, yes, I did this. I did my lead gen today, and no, I didn't do my lead gen today. By the way, I'm happy to do this with any of you. I have an agent in one of my other offices who is sending me a thumbs up or a thumb down every evening, whether he did his lead gen or not. Now, whether the point is that it's helping him, right? It's helping him to think, well, now I have to report it. Maybe I'll actually help me to be more intentional. I'm happy to do that with anybody who wants it. Most people don't want it. They're scared. So this is what happened. This, if you look very carefully and you can see some boxes and a filing cabinet down in the bottom right corner here. This is a window of a door of an office. I should have had 2 pictures, right? One of the door and then one of this posted piece of paper there. So this was at an office. This was at this office some years ago. And so it's not up there anymore. Just basically saying, don't bug me now. This person was prominent in the office, well known. People were going to have questions of them. So they were advertising. You could do that too. Maybe it's a good thing to do with certain children. Maybe you could gamify it. I don't know. All right, I'm now going to spend the last 10 minutes talking about misunderstandings, things that people think are true that aren't true. Multitasking is completely not a thing. We all say, oh, I'm multitasking. It's BS. You're never multitasking. If you are, there's 2 reasons I know this. Number one, has anyone ever been working on an email and then it's a very deep, important email and they're working on the email, they get distracted, they come back to the email and they forget where they were and what their point was. That's example number 1. Example number 2, if you are in a meeting, a class or anything, and you are reading your phone or looking at your phone or looking at a text or anything like that, you did not hear the actual words the speaker spoke. I was really embarrassed about this about a month ago. There was a meeting in the Berkeley office and it wasn't a participatory meeting. It was like come hear how this agent got their success. And the senior agent was talking, we call it Humble Beginnings series. It's great. And I'm sitting at the back, and the lady being interviewed called me out and called out the program, the productivity coaching program, in a nice way. But she called out my name and is like, oh my God, I'm buried in my phone. It was so embarrassing, right? I had no idea what she said. I knew she called me out, and it seemed positive. So that's the danger. You are, but the more important thing here is you're not actually hearing anything. You are focused on what our brains aren't capable of multiple listening modalities, multiple attention modalities. We are capable of one at a time. So if you are looking at your phone, you did not hear the words. Now, we're smart people. We're crafty. We can usually pull it together and get the gist of it. But I promise you, you didn't hear the words. I could not repeat it back verbatim. That's this phenomenon at work. This is what we were talking about before. Everything does not matter the same. You have 50 things to do on your list. What is a success? What is going to drive forward your goal? What is your one thing stuff and what isn't? Make that assessment in the morning and then just try to get done what you need to get done. Now, after years and years of doing this, I feel this part I got because I do this almost all the time, especially when I'm on a Sunday afternoon, if I don't have an open house and I'm sitting in front of my computer and I've got 7 different tasks. Doing the prioritization thing is something I think I do. Okay. And stuff doesn't get done, and I'm okay with it. So part of the problem for years is that I had 15 things on my to-do list and I just did 7 and I felt like a total failure that day. That's the wrong way to look at it. Did you do the stuff that is critical to your success? Though, and you can make it even simpler. Did you do the one thing that would drive forward all the other things in that modality of business? Number 3, discipline. It takes time to form habits. That's all this says. 66 days, according to the book. So don't expect to develop a new habit overnight. Okay, it takes time. If you decide that you want to do lead gen every morning at 9 o'clock from 9 to 10 every morning, and that's going to be your new discipline, cut yourself some slack because it's going to be hard to keep to that. Balanced. We don't have balanced lives. We're constantly counterbalancing different priorities. So if somebody has a new baby on the way, there's going to be a time in the next month or so, right, where your focus is going to be on life, not on work, for maybe 48 hours, 60 hours, maybe a whole week. That's okay. That's the way it is. There's no such thing. No one leads a balanced life. Not anyone I know. There's always one thing that's more important. Anyone ever used to watch the old show, The West Wing, on TV? Anyone remember that show? Yeah, well, anyway, it was a great show. I loved the show. There was an episode in season 1 or season 2 where the chief of staff to the president has a real serious dramatic thing with his wife because he wants to work on getting his president reelected or getting his president's thing through Congress or whatever. And she wanted him to spend more time at home. Classic example of his whole argument was this, why he couldn't spend more time with her. In the end, she divorced him. Sorry, spoiler alert. She divorced him. But it was a great example. All right, let's see. Willpower. I love this one too. Willpower is not always on will call. I'm going to give you an example. How many people here have gone to the grocery store at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and ended up buying something they didn't need? Because at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you don't have the willpower you had at 10 o'clock in the morning to say, no, I don't need that. So you end up buying crap. Stuff you don't need. That is this example. Okay, and the book has a great study about a parole board. And anyway, think about this. That is why the book recommends you do your one thing in the morning. Because, or whatever your morning is, by the way, not necessarily 9 to 10. It could be 1 to 2 if you're a musician and you sleep until 11. Whatever your morning is at the start of your day. That's better from the strict point of view of your willpower to get done. Because the underlying idea here is that it's not as much fun as the other stuff. Who would agree with me that negotiating, writing offers, going on appointments is more fun than making phone calls and texts and door knocking? Right? So that's why we need to think about this willpower piece. All right, finally, I want you to set manageable priorities. So if this is all new to you, don't be crazy trying to do 15 hours of lead gen a week. Maybe you start with 5 hours with maybe a half an hour, an hour a day, or maybe even 3 hours with a half an hour every day. Okay, build up to it. Time block. Make your calendar show your time for these intentional activities. Think about what distracts you. I mean, I've been sharing a lot about what distracts me, but maybe you have things that distract you. How are you going to handle them? Finally, the last thing I want to say is please, please be gentle with yourself, because this is really hard. You know, you could make an argument that this is the hardest thing we do in our lives, is figure out how to use this precious commodity called time. You know, money comes and goes, and it's certainly hard to manage money. But time, it just goes. And how much do we have? We don't even know. How are we going to use it? And it's lifelong effort. It takes time. So don't be beaten up on yourself that you don't have it all figured out. As I said, I'm a work in progress too. All right, that's it, guys. If you want a copy of this presentation, the PDF, you simply need to click on this QR code and my assistant will send it to you. We're done. Thank you, guys. I'm gonna say goodbye to my friends on YouTube.